Hi everyone, good morning. Tengbu from Capital Dynamics again, as usual, on a nice Saturday morning. I hope you have had a good week. Today, our topic will be pretty interesting. Well, as you can see from our caption, it says China versus United States. The choice is clear. Is it clear? You know, once upon a time, the highly respected US diplomat Henry Kissinger, he once said, to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous. To be a friend of the United States is fatal. And this is from Henry Kissinger. So why am I talking about US versus China again? Well, it's related to this former Prime Minister of Malaysia who somehow refuses to die, who is senile, who is becoming more and more stupid. He made a comment which I have to comment on because this ex-Prime Minister of ours criticized the current Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim for being too friendly towards China over United States of America. Just to share with you, just to make sure you get the facts correct, this ex-Prime Minister of Malaysia criticized Tunku Abdul Rahman, the first Prime Minister. Tun Razak was Prime Minister too short for him to criticize. The third Prime Minister, Hussein Onn, was also criticized by the ex-Prime Minister of Malaysia. Then came Pak La, was also criticized by this ex-Prime Minister. Najib was criticized. Muhyiddin was criticized. And then the current Prime Minister. So here you have this Prime Minister, ex-Prime Minister, who somehow can never close his mouth. And he made this comment. So I feel that I do not know why the Malaysian media still wants to report on what this idiot says. Really? Why must we give him the attention? No, because the media has given him some coverage. Therefore, I feel that as a fair, objective Malaysian, I have to comment on his very nasty comment, very malicious comment. You know, the comments from this ex-Prime Minister of ours, especially with regards to our Malaysian Prime Ministers, they're always very malicious. They always have got an ulterior motive. Anyway, if you look at his past foreign policy, right, where he told us in the 1980s to look east. Look east at that time means what? Look towards Japan, right? So there's this ex-civil servant, a senior civil servant by the name of Kamander Singh. He wrote a book on Malaysia's foreign policy under the fourth Prime Minister of Malaysia. And based on this highly ranked civil servant of Malaysia, he says, the Look East policy of Malaysia was one of the many of the disasters that the fourth Prime Minister committed and nearly killed the Malaysian economy. Now, the fourth Prime Minister criticized the Prime Minister Anwar for departing from Malaysia, taking Malaysia away from Malaysia's non-aligned policy. Why did the fourth Prime Minister align Malaysia towards Japan in the 80s when he launched his Look East policy, when everything was like, he was like as if, like, well, I don't know, a servant of the Japanese government? Is that non-aligned? And to quote Kamander Singh, he wrote that The Look-East policy cemented ties between Malaysia and Japan so much that Malaysia's biggest and most expensive mission abroad was located in Tokyo and built during the fourth Prime Minister's regime. This Tokyo is an expensive city, right? And most foreign embassies would rent. But Malaysia, under the fourth Prime Minister, built a 6 billion yen mission, which was about $55 million at that time, on purchased land. Now, what is wrong about the Look-East policy? Well, first thing is, it shows that Malaysia did not have a non-aligned foreign policy under his regime. More importantly, why was the fourth Prime Minister looking towards a country that committed atrocities, invasion of the entire Asian continent, including Malaysia? Now, this book, called Japan's Holocaust, written by an American military historian by the name of Brian Mark Reed. He has got a PhD from Cambridge University and a bachelor's degree from Yale University. He specializes in military history. So he wrote this book called Japan's Holocaust. As usual, please buy the book, get a copy and read it for yourself, because it is about the history of Imperial Japan's mass murder and rape during World War II. I'm quoting Mr. Rick. This is whatever I just read for you. It's not my own description. It is a description by Brian Rick. Now, what did he say? What does this book contain? It combines research conducted in over 18 research facilities in 5 countries to explore Imperial Japan's atrocities from 1927 to 1945, the end of Second World War. During Japan's military expansions and reckless campaigns throughout Asia and the Pacific. This book brings together the most recent scholarship and new primary research, that means original research, to ascertain that Japan claimed a minimum number of 30 million lives. In other words, 30 million Asians were killed, slaughtering far more than Hitler's Nazi Germany. Just to talk to you about the book. This book shows the Japan Emperor Hirohito not only knew about the atrocities, but he actually ordered them. He did nothing to stop them when they exceeded even the most depraved person's imagination, as illustrated during the rape of Nanjing, as well as many other events. Japan's Holocaust documented in painful detail the rape of Nanjing was not an isolated event during the Asian War, but representative of how Japan behaved for all its campaigns throughout Asia Pacific from 1927 to 1945. Mass murder, rape, economic exploitation was Japan's modus operandi during this period. And whereas Hitler SS hate attempted to hide their atrocities, Hirohito's legends committed their atrocities out in the open with enthusiasm and fanfare. Whereas Germany has done much since World War II to apologize, to atone for its war crimes, Japan has been absolutely disgraceful with its reparations for its crimes and its efforts to educate its population about wartime past. In fact, if you read the Japanese history textbook, you cannot find the raid of Nanking inside the textbook. Now, what is even more shocking is that, in general, Japan continues to glorify her criminals and her wartime past. Japanese prime ministers, one after another, endless of them, will go and visit the Yasukuni Shrine, where the Class A war criminals are buried, despite protests from China and South Korea. So, why would this fourth Prime Minister of Malaysia have a glorified look its policy, and then has the audacity to come and accuse Prime Minister Anwar of being pro-China at the expense of America? Jeez. You know, Japan invaded China in 1931 without any provocation. China was hopeless, was helpless, was poor, was in shambles, and Japan invaded by starting to invade Manchuria in 1931, and by 1937, Japan had controlled large sections of China. Now, in the end, China lost 20 million people. 20 million. This is the second most of any country during the war. As many as 17 million casualties were not soldiers. Of course, we know the famous rape of Nanjing or rape of Nanking. This is something that cannot be forgiven at all. Yet, here you have Malaysia's fourth Prime Minister who glorified Japan in Malaysia's foreign policy. Okay, what about United States? The role of the United States in the Korean War from 1950 to 1953. During that war, United States dropped 635,000 tons of bomb, including 30,000 tons of napalm. Napalm is a kind of chemical warfare. Not just in Korea, US bombed Cambodia, about 500,000 tons, North Vietnam, about 1 million tons, Laos, a poor country, 2 million tons, and South Vietnam, 4 million tons. All these were countries where America dropped bombs simply as and when America chooses to. Now, even up to now, do you know that there's no peace for the Korean War? There's been no peace treaty signed. So technically, United States and Korea are still at war. 3 million people died during the Korean War. The majority of them were civilian Koreans. What did the Koreans do to deserve this brutal invasion, this brutal war by United States of America? Up to now, at the moment, United States still has a huge military presence in South Korea with nearly 30,000 American soldiers, not counting the military bases in Japan, in Okinawa, in Guam.
Are you tired of doing investment research on stock markets? Want to spend time on your hobbies or go out with your friends instead? Introducing iCapital, where you can get independent, objective, and comprehensive investment advice on the go. Available in English and Mandarin and can be accessed via app, website, and print copy. We provide thorough, first-hand research-based findings on listed companies, economies, and stock markets, and clear perspective of how markets interact and how they influence investments, as well as provide Malaysian and global stock recommendations. stock portfolios with outstanding performance to follow. Subscribe now to iCapital for stock news. From only 49 ringgit a year, start investing like a fund manager. Subscribe now at www.icapital.biz.
That was the Korean War. Now, what about the role of the United States, and of course before that France, in the Vietnam War from 1955 to 1975? It's even more brutal than the Korean War. I mean, the bombings and so on and so forth are well recorded. What is normally forgotten by people like you or ordinary people is the role played by chemical warfare. America sprayed Agent Orange across the entire Indochina Peninsula. America sprayed 80 million liters of Agent Orange from 1962 to 1971. You can see the photos. It killed people. It will harm people permanently. Children that were not born will be born with all kinds of, I do not know how to describe it. I was in Ho Chi Minh City myself. I was walking in the street of Ho Chi Minh, and then I saw this handicapped person, if you want to call it, right, who was like no proper legs, and he was like crawling on the pavement. So I thought the person was coming to me to beg for money. What I discovered later was this person suffered from the inhuman destruction of Agent Orange. The person was mutilated and so on and so forth. Up to today, America has not apologized to Vietnam for using Agent Orange, let alone the other massacres, the My Lai massacres, the killings of innocent civilians. This is America in Vietnam, a neighbor to Malaysia. And you, the fourth Prime Minister, want us to be more friendly towards America? Come on. I mean, facts are facts. And in Laos, in many parts of Indochina, there are still a lot of landmines which are unexploded. And every year you see innocent Indochinese being killed because they accidentally step on the landmines. Like I said, American troops are stationed throughout the entire Asia Pacific, from the north in Japan all the way down to Australia. The name of the game, the name of the Western colonization is very simple. Divide and rule. Right? Ireland, the British partitioned Ireland in 1920. Even now you still have Ireland and Northern Ireland. Palestine and Israel, the United Partition Plan in 1947. India, Pakistan, the Mountbatten Plan in 1947, where the two countries were divided. That partitioning of India into India and Pakistan killed an estimated 1.5 million civilians. Vietnam, of course, partitioned. The 1954 Geneva Conference partitioned Vietnam into North and South. Germany, West Germany and East Germany in 1949. Korea, the 38th parallel between North Korea and South Korea, which is still divided now. And of course, mainland China and Taiwan, where, I don't know, America is trying to do whatever it is to be able to create a war over Taiwan when China does not want to. British colonialism, if you look deeply enough, it's got brutal, devastating impact all over the world. I mentioned this book called The British Empire, A History of Legacy by Professor Caroline Elkins, a professor from Harvard University. I mentioned this book before. read it, you have very detailed research. But just look at India, how the British Empire destroyed the Indian Empire. Before Britain invaded and conquered India, India was one of the largest economies in the world, together with China. By the time India gained her independence, just after World War II, India was just about less than 1% of world GDP. Indian economy was devastated. By who? By the British. We know in Malaya, right, how the British has done the same thing. Whether it is the so-called the euphemistic new villages in Malaya or in Myanmar, or that time Burma. So you find that whichever Asian country you look at, the Western imperial powers cannot be trusted at all. And I have to put Indonesia, because Indonesia was under Dutch imperialism and colonization. The same thing, massacres and so on and so forth. Whatever you found in other Western colonies can be found in Indonesia. And then in the Philippines, where I've mentioned in the past, the American hypocrisy, well, it's hypocrisy really, how America colonized Philippines by pretending, by being a hypocrite, to say to the Philippine independence movement at that time that I'll help you expel the Spanish people, but actually the American forces betrayed the Philippines and conquered Philippines. I do not know why the current President Marcos Jr. is so forgetful about Philippines' own history, own exploitation under the American rule. In contrast, what do you have? In contrast, look at the experience of China. The experience of China with not just the whole of Asia, with Middle East, with countries all over the world. Now, there's a book by Professor David Kang. Professor David Kang is an American Korean. He's not Chinese. He's an American Korean who is a professor in an American university. He wrote the book before the West came into Asia. This is before the late Qing dynasty. So basically, he says that from 1368 to 1841, there were only two wars between China, Korea, and Japan, and Vietnam. In that 500 years, these four countries only had two wars. One, when China went to Vietnam in 1407, and Japan invaded Korea in 1592. 500 years, and this military conflict, out of these two, only one involved China. Then if you look at another author, Professor Ali Humayun, who wrote a book about the same period, but instead of the relations between China, Vietnam, Korea, and Japan, he wrote a book about the relationship between China and the Islamic world. The Islamic world meaning Central Asia and the Middle East. And Professor Ali's sources were from non-Western types. In other words, like Sejarah Melayu, Hikayat Hang Tuah, the Hikayat Raja-Raja Pasai. And the conclusion from Professor Ali Humayun is exactly the same as Professor David Kang, that China existed peacefully, prosperously with the Islamic Central Asia, Islamic Middle East. I mean, Muslim names like Hassan, Hussein, Mahmud actually took the form in China, took the form of Ha, Hu, and Ma during the Ming Dynasty. So that was how peaceful the relationships were between China and the Muslim world. And of course, you know Cheng He, who is basically he is a famous Chinese admiral, but he's basically a Muslim. And throughout that period, a lot of Muslims were living in China and were occupying high government positions. So, why? What is so wrong if it is true that Prime Minister Anwar has got some bias towards China? What is so wrong when you have more friendly ties with a peaceful country? As you can see, right during the Tang Dynasty, there was the Silk Road, and now we have the Belt Road Initiative, which is what? The Western media will tell you, oh, it's a Chinese camouflage way of trying to colonize the rest of the world. It is just China's way of conducting relationships with the rest of the world, like what she did during the Tang Dynasty. So Belt and Road is revisiting some of the old routes and building new routes. I would imagine that Belt and Road Initiative is one of, if not the greatest peaceful campaign ever launched by any single country in the world. So, we have a country, China, that's got rich civilization and that wants to have win-win partnership, wants to be friend with countries all over the world without domination, without the brutal domination of the West and Japan. So my question is this. My question before I ask you to subscribe to Capital Dynamics YouTube channel, before I ask you to like our channel, more importantly, I ask you to share our channel. Please share, because what I'm saying now, like I have said many times, is based on deep research. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of academic researches, academic books. Spread it around because people ought to know, more people ought to know about the truth. So, what is wrong with this ex-Prime Minister of ours who has to criticize Prime Minister Anwar's foreign policy, which is far-sighted and wise, and for the benefit of Malaysian interests? Has this fourth or seventh Prime Minister of Malaysia forgotten the atrocities of Japan? Hey, that's only 80 years ago, you know. Let me share this with you. I watched a live interview of Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's Prime Minister. In that interview, he said that he was alive at that time. He said that he himself witnessed the Japanese massacres of 100,000 Chinese in Singapore. Now, so why is this ex-Prime Minister of Malaysia, who can't seem to die, has so conveniently forgotten the atrocities of the Western countries and Japan, but is so obsessed over neutrality with China, over closer relationship with China? Is he stupid? Or is he simply anti-Chinese? This is not the first time he has raised issues with regards Malaysia and the Chinese people, Malaysia and China. Remember the uproar he raised about, wow, why are there so many Chinese signboards in KL, as if I'm in Little China? Oh boy, I should stop here because my frustration is building up, my anger is building up, My heart is building up. Oh yeah, before I close off, at the moment, the United States has created a global trade war, right? And Trump has sort of created this 90-day pause for America to negotiate on a bilateral basis with 70, 90, 80 countries all over the world. So Trump has proudly boasted that the United States has concluded a trade deal with the United Kingdom. That trade deal is so lopsided to the United Kingdom. But never mind, let's leave that for another day, right? Why United Kingdom was actually bullied by America. More importantly, is because Malaysia is also negotiating with America. So maybe this fourth-time Prime Minister, maybe he's really out of touch with the realities. Now, what is so important about the US-UK trade deal? Because the United States would be able, under Section 232, under the American law, the American government can actually probe, can actually investigate whatever they deem is necessary in terms of safeguarding America's national interests. So if America, for example, were to probe into the steel made by a British steel plant and found that, this is owned by a Chinese, whatever it is, Chinese businessman or whatever it is, America can take action on this and use their Section 232 and the new tariff or whatever trade laws that they have to block this steel made from Britain into America. In other words, although the trade deal is between US and UK, US can use whatever powers that she wants to actually contain China. So can you imagine America using that same Section 232 power on Malaysian products? Wouldn't that hurt the economic trade ties between Malaysia and China? That is one way America can sabotage the relationship that Malaysia has with China, or the relationship of any country that they may have with China. So our fourth-time Prime Minister better keep his mouth shut, or if he wants to keep his mouth open, please think carefully and investigate more deeply. Please share your comments. And as usual, we will comment and reply to you, or if your comments, we find that they are useful, we will discuss them in our next week's video. So don't forget, share them and help spread truth among us. With that, I hope you have a good weekend ahead. Bye-bye.